Hello everyone and welcome. This is my guide to how my guild defeats the Life Raid Rift. This rift is designed to be done by 10 people, but you can bring up to 20 in the raid and all will be eligible for loot and the inscribed source stone. It's probably advisable to bring a few extras above the 10 when you're first attempting it, just to make it that bit easier. Like most raid rifts, to do this one requires a main tank and an off tank, both with preferably over 100 toughness. We normally use 2 healers for the tanks, 1 on each, with any other healers focusing on any raid damage. The rest can be a mix of ranged and melee DPS, which will need over 100 hit or focus. And here we are in the first phase, to defeat Cain the Wild. He has several abilities. He does approximately 900 to 1000 raid damage to each member of the raid every 3 or so seconds, which will need to be healed up. He can summon 4 adds, which need to be picked up by the off tank before they go and do something quite unpleasant, such as eating all the healers. These can be tanked at the boss and just AoE'd down. The boss himself will put a stacking debuff on the tank, and if this starts to present a problem, then a tank swap may become necessary. After he dies, the raid should all run out of the rift to avoid pulling the next phase early. This brings us to the second phase, the Bile Venom Sentries. This is a pair of spiders that we tank with a tank each. We kill the first one, and then after that we move on to the second one. They every now and then will do a random knockback on raid members, which will do a small amount of damage. These just need to be healed up and are just there to be annoying. They will both spawn some little green spiders after doing an emote across the screen if you're close enough, which I apparently am not in this video at the moment. These can be DPS down if they are causing you a problem. Otherwise they can just be killed by any AoE going on near the boss, or just ignored until one of the bosses is dead. When one of them dies, as you'll see just there, they spawn about 5 or 6 small little spiders, which need to be rounded up and AoE'd down, along with any of the remaining small green spiders that are left alive. At that point, just move on to the second boss and repeat what you did with the first one. When he dies, he will spawn about 5 or 6 adds again. These will need to be AoE'd down while you're running out of the rift before the next phase. Fortunately, phase 3 is pretty much just some talking, which then leads you on to phase 4. Now, phase 4 is going to be the first time phase of this rift. The boss, Vinsuzla Deadgrowth, will appear in the middle of the raid, along with 4 idols that spawn around him. The boss will have a shield until the idols are destroyed, causing him to take no damage, so obviously you need to kill the idols first. Each idol will spawn a gnarled sentry, which needs to be picked up by one of the tanks. The first few times we did this rift, we DPS'd down one idol, then killed the add that it spawned, then moved on to the next one, and so on until the last one, when we killed the idol and then had the off tank pick up the final add and tank it while we all moved on to the boss. You then just DPS down the boss. During this phase, seeds will spawn around the rift on the ground and don't have a great deal of health. They have about 8,000, and these need to be DPS down quite quickly, because if you leave them for too long they will turn into another smaller tree add, which would then need to be picked up and killed. If you just put a few ranged DPS on the lookout for these and just kill them when they spawn. When you actually are killing the boss itself, watch out for the cleave he does to the front, but other than that he is pretty straightforward at that point, and you should quite easily be able to move on to the next phase, which is this phase, which is phase 5. The boss is Earl Aelfwar. You have slightly less time to complete this phase than the last phase, but that shouldn't present too much of a trouble. Have your tank pick up the boss and begin DPS on him. You'll see that you get a screen message come up that the Earl will glare at a player. after a few seconds they will be trapped inside an engulfing spore. DPS need to switch to this and kill the spore, as an AoE gets put on the ground shortly after the player is trapped, and obviously if they're still trapped inside the spore, then the AoE will kill them. When the spore is killed, players need to then quickly move out of the AoE on the ground and return to DPSing the boss. Keep repeating this, and when the boss is dead, the stage will be completed. If you are having trouble with the DPS requirement on this phase, then your off-tank can switch to a DPS spec at the stage change, because only one tank is needed for any point during this phase. We now have the 6th and final stage of this rift, the Marquis Valone. He will, at stages in the fight, change into the other bosses that you fought before. For the first 5% of his health, he will have no real abilities, and the tank just needs to run in and pick him up. At about 95%, he will then change into a wolf like the first stage boss, and he will gain the AoE that Cain the Wild had in that phase, but he casts it much less frequently than the original boss did. At approximately 80%, he will change into one of the spider sentries from phase 2, and he will also then gain the knockback ability that they had in this phase, along with the AoE that he had at the beginning. These stages are both pretty straightforward. As you can see here, the tank just picks him up and everyone just keeps DPSing him. The raid damage is reasonably light, and if you've been able to heal through the other stages, you should quite easily be able to heal through this one. Then, when he gets to approximately 40%, he will change for the last time, and he will become Vinsula from phase 4. He will add the ability from the previous phase to trap raid members in the spores after glaring at them with the emote, which of course need to be then DPS down again to free up the raid members before returning to DPS on the boss. He will also gain the cleave that Vinsula had, so melee and other DPS that want to be nearby, make sure you're standing behind the boss. The tanks will also require a bit more healing at this point. Glowing spores will also spawn around the edge of the rift at this point, and will make their way towards the boss. These should be killed by DPS assigned to it before they reach the boss, if possible. And that's pretty much the entire fight. If you just continue that and DPS him down until the boss is dead, the rift will be complete. And I think looking at that, he is nearly going to fall over, and that will be the rift complete. So thank you for watching this video. I've been Zero Override, and I hope you have success in defeating this rift.